The Trojan War was over at last, its echoes fading across the blood-soaked plains. For 10 long years, Odysseus, king of Ithaca, had fought bravely alongside his fellow Greeks. It was his cunning idea, the legendary wooden horse, that finally brought victory and ended the endless siege. The city of Troy now lay in ruins, smoke rising from shattered walls, and the Greeks cheered, their hearts full of relief and triumph, eager to return home at last. Odysseus stood on his ship, gazing out over the restless sea, longing for Ithaca, his beloved wife Penelope, and his young son Telemachus, whom he had not seen in so many years. The men loaded their ships with supplies and treasure, their hands busy, but their minds already drifting homeward, singing songs of their distant families as they worked. Spirits were high as they set sail, laughter and hope filling the air, believing their troubles were finally behind them, and that peace awaited. But high above, the gods on Mount Olympus watched, their own plans unfolding, indifferent to mortal hopes. With the coastline of Troy fading into the morning mist, Odysseus felt a surge of hope. Each wave, he believed, would bring him closer to the shores of home. He stood tall at the helm, wind in his hair, ready for whatever the unpredictable sea might bring. The journey home had truly begun, but the path home would be far longer and more dangerous than he could ever have imagined, filled with trials and perils beyond any he had faced in war. The sea stretched before them, vast, mysterious, and utterly unpredictable, a world of both promise and threat. Odysseus was determined, his resolve unbroken, but fate was about to test him in ways he could never foresee. The adventure was only beginning, and the true test of Odysseus's courage and cunning still lay ahead. For 9 days, the ships sailed smoothly across the open sea, the men relaxed and hopeful, their spirits lifted by the gentle winds and the promise of home. Laughter echoed across the decks, and the sailors believed their troubles were behind them. On the 10th day, everything changed. The sky darkened, thick, menacing clouds gathered overhead, and a heavy sense of dread filled the air. The sailors exchanged worried glances, sensing that something terrible was about to unfold. Odysseus sensed danger as the wind began to howl, and the sea rose in fury, churning beneath the ships. The once calm waters turned wild, and the crew braced themselves for the coming storm. Waves crashed over the ships, tossing them like toys in the hands of angry gods. The decks became rivers, and the men fought to keep their footing. Rain blinded the men, thunder shook the sky, and lightning split the darkness with blinding flashes. The roar of the storm was deafening, drowning out all hope of command. The storm, sent by the gods, scattered the fleet in every direction. Ships vanished into the chaos, swallowed by the raging sea and the blinding rain. Odysseus lost sight of his other ships, focusing only on saving his own crew. He gripped the helm, determined to guide his men through the tempest. Supplies were swept away, and fear gripped every heart. The men clung to the rails, praying for mercy as the storm raged on. The men cried out for mercy, but the storm drowned their voices, their pleas lost in the roar of wind and water. When the winds finally calmed, they were lost, adrift in unknown waters, surrounded by silence and uncertainty. They had survived, but their journey home was now a voyage into the unknown. Exhausted and shaken, the men gazed at the endless horizon, unsure of what awaited them. The sea was no longer a path to Ithaca, but a maze of peril, filled with hidden dangers and unseen threats lurking beneath the waves. Yet Odysseus and his men braced for what lay ahead, their resolve hardened by the storm, ready to face whatever new trials the gods would send. Exhausted and lost, Odysseus and his crew spotted a lush, mysterious island. Desperate for rest, they landed and sent 3 men to explore. The islanders, the Lotus Eaters, welcomed them and offered the magical lotus flower. The men ate the sweet lotus and instantly forgot their homes and mission. All they wanted was to stay, lost in blissful forgetfulness. Odysseus waited anxiously by the shore, growing alarmed as his men did not return. Sensing danger, he prepared to act. The island's beauty hid a powerful threat. The spell of the lotus threatened to end their journey before it truly began. Odysseus's resolve was tested. He would not let his men be lost to forgetfulness. He knew he had to save them, no matter the cost. The struggle to continue home had only just begun. When his scouts failed to return, Odysseus searched and found them among the lotus eaters. Lost in a daze, their memories of home slipping away with every bite of the strange fruit. He dragged them back to the ship, tying them down to prevent escape, and ordered a swift departure, fearing the island's enchantment would claim more of his men if they lingered. Soon they reached a wild, rugged island with no towns, only goats and a mysterious cave, its entrance looming in the rocky cliffs like a dark invitation. Odysseus, ever curious and bold, led 12 men to explore, bringing strong wine as a gift, hoping it might win favor with any inhabitants they might meet. Inside the cave, they found cheese, milk, and lambs, but no host. The air was thick with the scent of animals and fresh dairy, hinting at a powerful presence. His men urged him to leave, warning of danger, but Odysseus insisted on waiting, driven by curiosity and the hope of generous hospitality. Suddenly, heavy footsteps shook the ground. A giant cyclops, Polyphemus, appeared, filling the cave's entrance with his massive form and casting a long, menacing shadow. The men were trapped as the Cyclops rolled a massive boulder across the entrance, sealing them inside with terrifying strength. The monster demanded to know who they were, his single eye glaring with suspicion and hunger. Odysseus explained they were Greeks seeking hospitality, but the Cyclops scoffed at the gods, mocking their customs and showing no fear of divine punishment. Without warning, he seized 2 men and devoured them, their screams echoing off the stone walls as the others watched in horror. The Greeks were horrified, trapped in darkness with a monster, their hopes of escape fading with every passing moment. Odysseus realized brute force would not save them from this nightmare. He needed a plan, one that relied on wit, not strength, for only cleverness could outmatch such a foe. The night was filled with terror and despair. Escape seemed impossible, and the men clung to each other, dreading the dawn. But Odysseus's mind was already at work, searching for any glimmer of hope in the darkness. The battle of wits had begun, and the fate of the Greeks would depend on Odysseus's cunning. The Cyclops, Polyphemus, blocked the cave with a boulder, trapping the Greeks. He mocked their pleas for mercy and devoured 2 more men. Odysseus considered killing the giant, but realized they'd never move the stone. He knew only cunning could save them. The survivors waited in terror, hoping for a chance to escape. Each moment brought new dread. Odysseus's resolve hardened. He would not let his men die in vain. The darkness pressed in, but hope flickered. Morning would bring another test. At dawn, Polyphemus ate 2 more men, then left, sealing the cave behind him. Odysseus spotted the giant's olive wood club and devised a plan. He and his men cut a section, sharpened it, and hid it in the cave. 4 strong men were chosen by lot to help. That evening the Cyclops returned, ate again, and Odysseus offered him strong wine. The giant drank greedily, growing drunk and careless. Polyphemus demanded Odysseus's name. Odysseus replied, "My name is Nobody." The Cyclops laughed, promising to eat nobody last. Soon the giant collapsed in a drunken sleep. The moment for action had come. Odysseus's plan was set in motion. The fate of the crew hung in the balance. As Polyphemus slept, Odysseus and his men heated the sharpened stake in the fire. With courage and precision, they drove it into the Cyclops' single eye. The giant awoke, screaming in agony, thrashing blindly. He called for help, but when the other Cyclops asked who hurt him, he cried, "Nobody is hurting me." The others, confused, left him to his misery. Polyphemus raged, but the Greeks remained hidden. The cave shook with the monster's pain. Odysseus's trick had worked. The Cyclops was blinded and helpless. But escape was still uncertain. The men waited, tense and silent, for dawn. The monster guarded the exit, determined to catch them. Odysseus prepared one final ruse. The struggle for freedom was not yet over. The dawn would decide their fate. At sunrise, Polyphemus let his sheep out, feeling their backs for hidden men. Odysseus had tied his men beneath the sheep, clinging to their bellies. The Cyclops, blinded, missed them all. Odysseus escaped last, hidden under the largest ram. Once outside, the men untied themselves and rushed to the ship with stolen sheep. The crew rejoiced at their return, mourning the lost but grateful to be alive. Odysseus ordered a swift departure. They had outwitted the monster and survived. The sea called them onward, but new dangers awaited. Their victory was hard won, but the journey was far from over. As the ship sailed away, Odysseus's pride flared. He taunted the blinded Cyclops, revealing his true name. Polyphemus, enraged, hurled a boulder, nearly smashing the ship. Odysseus's men begged him to be silent, but he shouted again, sealing his fate. The Cyclops prayed to Poseidon, cursing Odysseus's journey home. Poseidon heard, and his wrath stirred the seas. Odysseus had made a powerful enemy. The path to Ithaca would now be filled with storms and suffering. The hero's boast had dire consequences. As the ship vanished into the horizon, the true challenge began. The gods wouldn't make his return easy. Odysseus's journey was far from over. The long road home had only just begun.
Our story begins with Odysseus, king of Ithaca, renowned throughout the ancient world for his cleverness, courage, and unwavering spirit. He was a leader admired by his people, a man whose name was spoken with respect in every corner of Greece. After 10 long years of brutal war in Troy, all Odysseus wanted was to return home. The battles had left him and his men weary, their hearts heavy with memories of conflict and loss. He missed his beloved wife, Penelope, whose faithfulness was legendary, and longed to see his young son, Telemachus, who had grown up in his absence. The thought of reuniting with his family filled him with hope and longing. Odysseus gathered his loyal, battle-scarred men and set sail for Ithaca, their hearts full of hope and dreams of homecoming. Each man yearned for the familiar shores of their homeland, but the sea is unpredictable, and the gods are fickle, their moods shifting like the winds. The journey ahead would not be easy. Poseidon, god of the sea, angered by Odysseus's actions, vowed to make his journey perilous and fraught with danger at every turn. What should have been a short voyage home stretched into years of hardship and wandering. The men faced endless days and nights at sea, their spirits tested by time and adversity. Storms battered their ships, and the endless ocean tested their resolve. Each wave threatened to dash their hopes, but they pressed on. The men grew weary, but Odysseus stood strong, eyes fixed on the distant horizon, his determination unbroken by hardship. At night, he gazed at the stars, thinking of home and the promise he made to return. The constellations became his guide and his comfort. Memories of Ithaca, its sunlit hills and peaceful shores, fueled his determination, reminding him of all he fought for. He promised his men, no matter the danger, he would lead them home. His word was their anchor in the storm. The journey would demand every ounce of his strength, wit, and cunning. Each day brought new challenges to overcome. Odysseus was not just a warrior, he was a leader who inspired hope, a hero who would not fail his people, no matter the cost. The adventure was only beginning, and the greatest challenges still lay ahead, waiting beyond the horizon. The sea, the gods, and fate itself would test him at every turn. pushing him to his limits. But Odysseus's longing for home burned brighter than any storm, stronger than any obstacle the world could throw at him. And so, with hope in their hearts and courage in their souls, their epic Odyssey began. A violent storm swept Odysseus and his crew far off course, tossing them across the wild Mediterranean until they landed on a strange, tranquil island shrouded in mist and mystery. The gentle lotus eaters greeted them with open arms, offering a sweet, magical flower that seemed harmless, but held a secret power. The weary sailors, desperate for rest, ate the lotus blossoms. Instantly, their memories of home and their mission faded away, replaced by a dreamy contentment. All they wanted now was to stay forever, lost in blissful forgetfulness, their worries and ambitions dissolving in the island's gentle haze. Odysseus, noticing his men missing from the ship, grew anxious and went ashore to search for them, determined to bring them back. He found them dazed and uncaring, their eyes vacant, eager only to remain in the island's seductive peace. Realizing the grave danger, Odysseus acted swiftly, his mind clear where his men's were clouded. He ordered his loyal men to drag the others back to the ship, fighting not just their bodies, but the powerful spell of the lotus. The lotus eaters watched silently, making no move to stop them. The true struggle was not with the islanders but for the minds and hearts of his own crew. The enchanted sailors wept and pleaded to stay, their longing for the lotus overwhelming, but Odysseus was relentless in his resolve. He tied them firmly to the benches, making sure none could escape, and returned to the island's dangerous embrace. With everyone finally aboard, they set sail, leaving behind the island's deceptive peace and the haunting memory of its flowers. Odysseus's unwavering leadership had saved his crew from a gentle but deadly trap, proving his strength and wisdom. The lesson was clear. On this journey, not all dangers are monsters. Some are temptations that quietly steal your will and purpose. The journey continued, and Odysseus's resolve only grew stronger, his mind set on home and the safety of his men. He would not let his men forget their home, or the loved ones waiting for them, no matter what temptations they faced. The Odyssey pressed on, the sea ahead full of new perils and challenges, but Odysseus's spirit remained unbroken. The next land was Aeaea, home to the enchantress Circe. Odysseus sent men to explore a palace deep in the forest. They found tame lions and wolves and a beautiful voice singing inside. Circe welcomed them, offering food and drink laced with magic. The men, except for cautious Eurylochus, accepted her hospitality. With a wave of her wand, Circe transformed them into pigs. Their minds remained human, trapped in animal bodies. Eurylochus, horrified, ran back to warn Odysseus. The crew was terrified, urging Odysseus to flee. But Odysseus refused to abandon his men. He prepared to face Circe, determined to break her spell. This was no ordinary enemy. Her power was subtle and deadly. Odysseus's courage and cunning would be tested as never before. The fate of his men and the journey home hung in the balance. The hero pressed on, ready to confront the witch. Eurylochus described Circe's magic, and Odysseus set out alone to rescue his men. On the path, the god Hermes appeared, sent by Athena. Hermes gave Odysseus a magical herb, moly, to protect him from Circe's spells. He instructed Odysseus, accept her wine, but when she tries her magic, threaten her with your sword. Armed with this knowledge, Odysseus entered Circe's palace. Circe offered him enchanted wine, but the moly shielded him. When her spell failed, Odysseus drew his sword, startling Circe. She begged for mercy and swore not to harm him. Odysseus demanded she free his men. Circe agreed, reversing her spell and restoring the crew. The men, shaken but grateful, reunited with their king. Odysseus's resolve and divine aid had triumphed over dark magic. The crew learned that cleverness and courage could defeat even the most powerful enchantments. Their journey was far from over, but hope was renewed. The Odyssey continued, with new wisdom gained. With Circe's spell broken, Odysseus confronted her directly, his eyes blazing with determination. He stood tall, unwavering, and demanded that she release his men from her enchantment. He made her swear a powerful oath, binding her by the gods to do no further harm to him or his companions, ensuring their safety. Circe, deeply impressed by his courage and the protection of the gods, agreed. She transformed from a foe into a valuable ally, her respect for Odysseus growing. She welcomed Odysseus and his weary men into her grand hall, treating them as honored guests with lavish feasts and comfort. For an entire year, they rested in Circe's care, regaining their strength and spirits, enjoying a rare peace after so many trials. Yet, despite the comfort, Odysseus's longing for home and his family never faded. Each day, he gazed toward the horizon, yearning for Ithaca. At last, he told Circe they must leave. Understanding his resolve, she revealed a new and daunting challenge that awaited him. To find the way home, Odysseus would have to journey to the land of the dead and seek the wisdom of the prophet Tiresias, a task no mortal had ever survived. No living man had ever returned from the underworld, and the very thought sent chills through the bravest hearts. The crew was filled with dread and uncertainty, but Odysseus's determination did not waver for a moment. Circe gave him detailed instructions and secret knowledge for the perilous journey ahead, warning him of the dangers he would face. Odysseus prepared himself, gathering his courage and arming for the most terrifying trial yet. The path to Ithaca would now lead through darkness and death, a journey into the unknown. But the hero's courage was unshaken, his spirit burning brighter in the face of danger. He gathered his loyal men, inspiring them to face the unknown together, united by hope and resolve. The Odyssey demanded not just strength but wisdom, unity, and unwavering resolve from all. Odysseus would do whatever it took to find his way home, no matter the cost or the darkness ahead. The next test would challenge not only his strength, but his very soul and spirit. And so, with hearts steeled and fate uncertain, the journey to the underworld began. Guided by Circe's instructions, Odysseus sailed to the edge of the world. There, he performed the rituals to enter the underworld. The land was shrouded in darkness, filled with restless spirits. Odysseus sacrificed to attract the dead, standing guard with his sword. Among the spirits, he saw fallen comrades and even his own mother. Grief threatened to overwhelm him, but he stayed focused on his mission. At last, the prophet Tiresias appeared. Tiresias warned of Poseidon's wrath and the dangers ahead. He prophesied disaster if Odysseus's men harmed the cattle of the sun god, Helios. Only by resisting temptation could they hope to survive. Tiresias's words were both a warning and a guide. Odysseus listened, determined to heed the prophecy. The underworld tested his courage and resolve. He emerged wiser, ready for the trials to come. The underworld revealed hard truths to Odysseus. He faced the sorrow of lost loved ones and the burden of prophecy. Tiresias's warning weighed heavily. More suffering awaited, but hope remained. Odysseus learned that leadership meant enduring pain for the sake of others. He left the land of the dead with new resolve. The journey home would be longer and harder than he'd imagined, but he would not give in to despair. The knowledge gained in darkness would light his way forward. Odysseus's trials were far from over, but he was prepared. He would use wisdom and courage to guide his men. The Odyssey was a test of spirit as much as strength. With each challenge, Odysseus grew as a leader and a hero. The quest for home continued, undaunted. Every challenge tested more than Odysseus's strength. It tested his character. The Lotus Eaters tempted him to forget his duty. Circe's magic tested his wit and resolve. In the underworld he faced his deepest fears and grief. Odysseus proved a true leader, never choosing the easy path. He saved his men from enchantment and sought wisdom in the land of the dead. Each trial demanded patience, cleverness, and unwavering determination. These hardships shaped him into a wiser, more resilient hero. Odysseus's journey was not just about returning home, but about becoming worthy of it. Through suffering and sacrifice, he earned the right to reclaim his kingdom. The Odyssey was forging a legend. Odysseus's heroism was defined by more than strength or skill in battle. His loyalty to home, clever mind, and compassion for his men set him apart. He faced monsters, temptations, and the darkness of the underworld, but never lost hope. Odysseus used wisdom as much as courage, saving his crew time and again. He bore the weight of leadership, risking everything for those he loved. His journey showed that true heroism is perseverance in the face of despair. Odysseus's trials made him not just a king but a legend. The Odyssey is a testament to the strength of the human spirit. With heart, wit, and unbreakable resolve, Odysseus proved himself one of history's greatest heroes. His story endures, inspiring all who long for home and dare to dream. Odysseus finally stood on the shore of Ithaca, his homeland. The familiar sea air and olive groves greeted him after 20 years away. The Trojan War and his perilous journey were behind him, but new dangers awaited. He wondered if Penelope was still faithful, and if Telemachus had grown into a man. Athena, his protector, appeared and warned him. His palace was overrun with enemies. He could not return as king. He must be clever and cautious. With Athena's help, Odysseus hid his treasure in a sacred cave. She disguised him as an old beggar, his strong body now frail, his kingly clothes turned to rags. No one would recognize him. This disguise was his shield. As a stranger in his own land, he set off toward his palace, heart heavy with hope and fear. He needed to find Eumaeus, his loyal swineherd, to test his faithfulness. The path was long and dusty, each step bringing him closer to the life he left behind. Odysseus knew he must tread carefully, his life and kingdom depended on it. The goddess's words echoed in his mind, patience and cunning would win the day. He moved through the landscape of his youth, now changed by time and absence. Every sight and sound reminded him of what he had lost and what he might regain. The king, now a beggar, prepared for his final and most personal battle. He would reclaim his home, but first, he had to see who remained loyal. The journey was not yet over. The hardest test was still to come. Odysseus pressed on, determined to restore his kingdom. The fate of Ithaca rested on his wits and resolve. He was home, but not yet safe. The gods watched, and the future of Ithaca hung in the balance. Odysseus's story was far from finished. The king's return had only just begun. Disguised as a beggar, Odysseus found Eumaeus, his loyal swineherd. Eumaeus, not recognizing his master, welcomed the stranger with food and shelter. He spoke of the chaos at the palace. Over 100 suitors had invaded, seeking Penelope's hand and Odysseus's throne. The suitors feasted daily, slaughtering livestock and draining the kingdom's wealth. They treated the servants cruelly and showed no respect for the royal family. Telemachus, now a young man, was powerless against them. The suitors mocked him and plotted to kill him, hoping to erase Odysseus's line. Eumaeus's loyalty was unwavering, but the kingdom was on the brink of collapse. The palace, once a place of order, had become a den of greed and waste. Odysseus listened, his resolve hardening. He saw the true extent of the betrayal and the suffering of his people. The suitors' arrogance threatened everything he had fought for. Eumaeus's faithfulness gave Odysseus hope. The king knew he must act soon to save his home. The time for patience was ending. The time for justice was near. Ithaca needed its true king to return. Guided by Eumaeus, Odysseus entered his own palace, now overrun by suitors. The great hall reeked of excess, wine, meat, and arrogance. The suitors lounged, feasting and mocking, acting as if they owned the place. Antinous, their cruel leader, sneered at the beggar, Odysseus. He hurled insults and a footstool, striking Odysseus, who endured the blow without flinching. The suitors laughed, blind to the king in their midst. Odysseus humbly asked for bread, spinning a tale of lost fortune to test their hearts. Only a few wondered if he might be a god in disguise, but Antinous scoffed. Odysseus saw their true nature, greedy, heartless, and corrupt. He sat quietly, observing, his anger growing cold and focused. The suitors' wickedness was clear. They had defiled his home and shamed his name. Odysseus's resolve to reclaim his kingdom hardened. He would show them the justice they deserved. The king's patience was nearly at its end. The suitors had sealed their fate with their cruelty. Odysseus waited, planning his next move. The time for mercy was over. The king would soon reveal himself. Justice was coming to Ithaca. Penelope, hearing of the beggar's mistreatment, summoned him to her chambers. She hoped he might have news of Odysseus. Odysseus, careful not to reveal himself, spun a tale of being a traveler from Crete. He described meeting Odysseus, painting a vivid picture that brought Penelope to tears. The beggar swore Odysseus was alive and would return soon. Penelope clung to this fragile hope, grateful for the stranger's words. She offered him comfort, but Odysseus refused, insisting on remaining a humble beggar. He wished to stay in the hall, watching the suitors and finalizing his plan. Penelope respected his wishes and instructed her nurse, Euryclea, to wash the guest's feet. As Euryclea washed him, she recognized a scar on his leg, the mark of Odysseus. Shocked, she nearly revealed his identity, but Odysseus silenced her. His secret was safe for now. Penelope's kindness and faith gave Odysseus strength. The The queen's hope was rekindled even as danger loomed. Odysseus's disguise allowed him to see the truth in his home. The final confrontation was drawing near. The king and queen, separated by fate, were closer than ever. The palace was a place of secrets and silent courage. The stage was set for the return of Ithaca's true king. As Odysseus approached the palace, he saw an old, neglected dog lying by the gate. It was Argos, the hound he had raised as a pup. Despite years of neglect, Argos recognized his master beneath the beggar's disguise. Too weak to rise, Argos wagged his tail in greeting. Odysseus turned away, hiding his tears. Eumaeus explained the dog's story. Once swift and strong, now forgotten like his master. Argos's loyalty was a stark contrast to the betrayal inside the palace. The dog's condition mirrored the kingdom's decay. Odysseus's heart ached, but he pressed on. Argos, having seen his master one last time, peacefully passed away. It was a bittersweet reunion, the first true welcome Odysseus received at home. The dog's unwavering loyalty strengthened Odysseus's resolve. The king would not let such faith go unrewarded. Argos's death marked the end of an era and the beginning of Odysseus's reckoning. The king moved forward, determined to restore his home. Even in death, Argos reminded him of what was worth fighting for. Penelope was at her breaking point. For years, she had delayed the suitors by weaving and secretly unraveling a burial shroud. Her trick was discovered, and the suitors demanded she choose a husband. Trapped and desperate, Penelope prayed for escape. The beggar's words gave her a flicker of hope, but the pressure was immense. Inspired by Athena, Penelope devised a final challenge. She would marry the man who could string Odysseus's great bow and shoot an arrow through 12 axe heads. Only Odysseus had ever accomplished this feat. The contest would reveal the true king. Penelope's plan was a last stand against the suitors. Her faith and cleverness would test the worth of every man in the hall. The queen's love and loyalty shaped her final gamble. The fate of Ithaca would be decided by this impossible challenge. Penelope's hope rested on the return of her true husband. Penelope brought Odysseus's great bow into the hall, announcing her challenge. The suitors, eager and boastful, believed victory was within reach. They failed to see the deeper meaning. The bow was a symbol of the true king's power. Telemachus tried first, nearly succeeding but stopped at a signal from Odysseus. The suitors took their turns, but none could string the bow. Their strength was no match for the weapon's resistance. The hall grew tense as failure mounted. Only Antinous and Eurymachus remained, but even they hesitated. Odysseus, still disguised, humbly asked to try. The suitors mocked him, but Penelope insisted he be allowed. Telemachus sent his mother away, knowing what was to come. Eumaeus brought the bow to Odysseus. With ease, Odysseus strung the bow, stunning the crowd. A sign from Zeus thundered outside. The king was ready. One by one, the suitors failed to string the bow, their pride crumbling. The weapon resisted every unworthy hand. The hall grew silent as hope faded. Antinous suggested they try again tomorrow, but Odysseus, the beggar, stepped forward. The suitors jeered, but Penelope allowed him to try. Telemachus sent her away, and Eumaeus handed Odysseus the bow. Odysseus handled it with ease, stringing it effortlessly. The suitors stared in disbelief. Odysseus took an arrow, aimed, and shot it through all 12 axe heads. The impossible had been done. The hall was hushed, fear and awe spreading among the suitors. Odysseus stood tall, ready to reveal himself. The time for justice had come. The king's return was undeniable. Ithaca's fate would be decided in the next moments. With the bow strung, Odysseus revealed himself at last. He shot an arrow through the 12 axe heads, then turned his aim on Antinous. The arrow struck true, and panic erupted among the suitors. Their weapons gone, they were trapped. Odysseus declared his return and condemned their crimes. Telemachus and loyal servants joined him in battle. The suitors begged for mercy, but justice was swift and final. The great hall became a place of reckoning. Odysseus, Telemachus, Eumaeus, and Philoetius fought with skill and fury. The suitors fell, their arrogance undone. The palace was cleansed of corruption. Odysseus reclaimed his home and his throne. Loyalty, cleverness, and perseverance had triumphed. Justice, long delayed, was finally served. The king had returned, and Ithaca was his once more.
Odysseus, the legendary king of Ithaca, was renowned not only for his cunning mind, but also for his unwavering courage and determination. As a leader, he was respected by his people and admired by his fellow warriors. His name became synonymous with adventure and resilience, echoing through the ages as a symbol of the indomitable human spirit. Odysseus was a central figure in the Trojan War, a conflict that raged for 10 long years. He fought bravely alongside other Greek heroes, enduring countless hardships and witnessing the devastation of Troy. His cleverness was legendary, most famously demonstrated by his idea for the wooden horse that ultimately led to the Greeks' victory. Yet, the end of the war did not bring peace for Odysseus. Instead, it marked the beginning of another epic ordeal, a journey home that would test his resolve and resourcefulness at every turn. For another 10 years, he sailed across treacherous seas, facing dangers that would have broken lesser men. The gods themselves seemed to conspire against him. Poseidon, angered by Odysseus's actions, unleashed storms and obstacles, making his voyage perilous and uncertain. Each day brought new threats, and the favor of the gods was as unpredictable as the sea itself. Along the way, Odysseus encountered terrifying monsters and powerful enchantresses. He outwitted the fearsome Cyclops Polyphemus, braved the deadly song of the sirens, and resisted the temptations of the sorceress Circe, who could turn men into beasts. Each encounter demanded not just strength, but also intelligence and restraint. Every challenge seemed to push him further from his beloved homeland. The journey was not just a physical one, but a test of his spirit and willpower. As the years dragged on, the hope of seeing Ithaca again became both a distant dream and his greatest motivation. Back in Ithaca, his wife, Queen Penelope, remained steadfast. She waited faithfully, raising their son Telemachus and fending off the advances of persistent suitors. Each day, she wove and unwove a shroud, cleverly delaying her decision and holding on to the hope that Odysseus would one day return. Without its king, Ithaca suffered. The throne sat empty, the palace halls grew quiet, and the people longed for the stability and wisdom that only Odysseus could provide. The absence of their leader left the kingdom vulnerable to both internal strife and external threats. Meanwhile, arrogant and ambitious suitors filled the royal halls, each vying for Penelope's hand in marriage. They sought not only her beauty, but also the power that came with ruling Ithaca. Their presence brought tension and uncertainty to the once peaceful kingdom. The people of Ithaca grew anxious, their future hanging in the balance. Rumors of Odysseus's fate spread, and hope began to wane. The kingdom's vulnerability was clear, and the need for their true king's return became more urgent with each passing day. Odysseus's journey was more than a quest to reunite with his family. It was a struggle to restore hope, order, and justice to his homeland. His perseverance and love for Ithaca would shape not only his destiny, but the fate of his people for generations to come. After 20 long years of wandering, enduring countless trials and perils across distant lands and treacherous seas, Odysseus finally set foot on the shores of Ithaca. The journey had left him battered and weary, his heart heavy with longing for home. Shipwrecked and utterly alone, he gazed upon the familiar coastline, uncertain if he would ever reclaim his place in the world he had left behind. The sun rose over the rugged cliffs, casting golden light on a man who had become a stranger in his own homeland. Yet, Odysseus could not simply reveal himself. The island was no longer safe. His enemies lurked in every shadow, and his palace was overrun by arrogant suitors vying for his wife's hand. Athena, the wise and watchful goddess who had guided him through so many dangers, came to his aid once more. She disguised him as a humble beggar, cloaking his noble features beneath rags and dust, so that he might move unseen among those who would do him harm. In this new guise, Odysseus began his cautious journey through the olive groves and winding paths of Ithaca. Seeking shelter and information, Odysseus made his way to the outskirts of the island, where he found refuge with Eumaeus, the loyal swineherd. Eumaeus, steadfast and kind, welcomed the ragged stranger into his modest hut, offering food and warmth without hesitation. Though he did not recognize his master, Eumaeus treated Odysseus with the respect and generosity owed to any guest, embodying the ancient Greek code of hospitality. As they sat by the fire, Eumaeus spoke of the troubles that plagued the palace. He described the suitors' greed and cruelty, the suffering of Penelope, and the uncertainty that hung over Ithaca in Odysseus's absence. Though his heart ached to hear of his family's pain, Odysseus listened in silence, careful not to reveal his true identity. Meanwhile, far from the palace, Odysseus's son Telemachus was returning from his own journey. Having searched the world for news of his father, Telemachus arrived at the humble homestead, determined and hopeful, unaware that destiny was about to reunite him with the man he had longed to meet all his life. In a moment, charged with divine power, Athena appeared and lifted the disguise from Odysseus. Before Telemachus's astonished eyes, the ragged beggar was transformed into the father he had never truly known. The truth was revealed, and the years of separation melted away in an instant. Overcome with emotion, father and son embraced, their hearts overflowing with joy and relief. After 2 decades apart, they were finally reunited, bound by love and the shared hope of restoring their family and their kingdom. Together, they devised a daring plan to reclaim their home from the suitors. In the flickering candlelight, they whispered strategies and promises, forging a bond of trust and determination that would carry them through the trials ahead. Disguised and resolute, Odysseus prepared to infiltrate his own palace. He would move among the suitors as a stranger, watching and waiting for the perfect moment to strike, determined to reclaim his home and restore honor to Ithaca. Disguised in rags, Odysseus stepped quietly into the once glorious halls of his own palace, now overrun by chaos and disrespect. The marble floors were littered with remnants of feasts, and the air was thick with the laughter of men who did not belong. Every step he took was heavy with memories of what his home had been, and the pain of seeing it in such disarray was almost overwhelming. Yet, he kept his head low, determined not to reveal himself too soon. The suitors, arrogant and cruel, jeered at the stranger in their midst. They hurled insults and scraps of food, mocking his appearance and treating him with utter contempt. None of them suspected that the beggar before them was the true king of Ithaca, returned after years of hardship and longing. Their laughter echoed through the halls, but Odysseus remained calm, his mind focused on the plan he had carefully crafted. Amidst the noise, only one soul recognized him instantly, his faithful old dog, Argos. The loyal hound, neglected and frail, lifted his head and wagged his tail with a final burst of joy. For years, Argos had waited for his master's return, and now, at last, he saw him. Overcome with emotion, Odysseus knelt beside his companion, sharing a silent farewell as Argos, content at last, closed his eyes and passed away. News of the mysterious beggar quickly reached Penelope, the queen. Despite her sorrow and the constant pressure from the suitors, she remained strong and wise. Hearing that a stranger had arrived, she felt a flicker of hope. Could this man bring word of her long-lost husband? With a steady voice, she summoned the beggar, determined to learn whatever news he might carry. In the dim candlelight, Odysseus spun a tale for Penelope, weaving together fragments of truth and clever lies. He spoke of distant lands and hardships, of a man who longed to return home. His words were carefully chosen, each one designed to comfort her and keep his secret safe. As she listened, Penelope's heart stirred with hope, sensing that there was more to this stranger than met the eye. Penelope felt an inexplicable connection to the beggar. There was a wisdom in his words, a familiarity in his manner that she could not ignore. Though she dared not believe it, a part of her soul recognized the man she had loved and waited for all these years. Still, she kept her feelings hidden, watching him closely for any sign of the truth. Later, as Odysseus prepared to rest, his old nurse Euryclea tended to him. While washing his feet, she discovered a scar, a mark she remembered from his childhood. In that instant, she knew the beggar's true identity. Overcome with emotion, Eurycleia wanted to cry out, but Odysseus quickly silenced her, begging her to keep his secret until the time was right. The palace was thick with secrets and tension. Odysseus knew that the moment to reveal himself had not yet come. He waited in the shadows, watching and planning, as the fate of his home and family hung in the balance. Penelope devised a contest with Odysseus's bow to choose a suitor. The task was impossible. String the bow and shoot through 12 axe heads. The suitors failed, revealing their unworthiness. Odysseus, still disguised, requested a chance. The suitors laughed, but Telemachus insisted. Odysseus strung the bow effortlessly, shocking the suitors. He shot an arrow through the axe heads, revealing his true identity. The contest was over, and a new game began. Odysseus, now revealed, took aim at the suitors. He struck down Antinous, the most arrogant, igniting panic. Telemachus had hidden the suitors' weapons, trapping them. Odysseus, Telemachus, and loyal servants fought fiercely. Athena aided them, deflecting the suitors' attacks. The hall was cleansed of the suitors' greed and disrespect. After the battle, Eurycleia informed Penelope of Odysseus's return. Penelope, cautious from years of false hope, approached him slowly. She tested him with a secret only they shared. Odysseus described their immovable bed, proving his identity. Her doubts vanished, and they embraced, reunited at last. Penelope tested Odysseus with their secret bed. She ordered it moved, knowing it was impossible. Odysseus's anger at the thought of it being moved confirmed his identity. He described the bed's construction, rooted in an olive tree. Penelope's doubts vanished, and they embraced, reunited at last. News of the suitors' slaughter spread, inciting anger. Families sought revenge, but Odysseus prepared to defend his home. Athena intervened, commanding peace. The mob dispersed, and Ithaca was finally at peace. Peace returned to Ithaca, and Odysseus reclaimed his throne. He reunited with his family, filling the void of 20 years. His story became legend, a testament to endurance and cunning. Odysseus, the patient king, earned his place among the greatest heroes.